Okay, I'm going to get cracking. I've got a little bit of say to introduce. So, hi, welcome to today's webinar, everybody. I think we can all agree that getting the right people into our organisations really helps shape the future success of the business. So I'm thrilled to have three wonderful gentlemen with me to share their thoughts on hiring practices and how integrating people, process and technology can deliver HR excellence. And we're going to do all this in 1 hour, so we'd best get started, I'd say. To introduce myself, I'm Matt Scrimshire. My mum was actually a HR director for many years, and that passion for supporting HR has led me to spend the last 14 years working in the HR tech space. I celebrated 2 years at HiBob last week, which is a big milestone, love that. And I've spent most of it as a customer success manager, but recently joined our sales engineering team to help new prospects who are interested in utilising Bob to get the most out of the platform. I'm in Nottingham at my home office today, and my pronouns are he, him, and I'd like to hand over to my panel to let them introduce themselves. So, Daniel, I'm going to start with you. A little intro, if you don't mind, please.
So I'm Dan. Pardon?
And tell us where you are as well.
Yeah, of course. I'm Daniel Eisenberg. I'm with Deel. I'm one of the black shirts, but mine says Deel. It doesn't say HiBob. We didn't plan this. I sit in Stockholm, Sweden. It actually just snowed, which is tremendously horrible from every part of the world. I can't understand it, how it can snow. It's May, but it did. I manage the Nordics operations at Deel. I've been with the company for about 2.5 years, which is about 50% of the company length, how long we've been. I don't know if any of you have heard of Deel. Happy to afterwards, feel free to reach out and I'll talk more about Deel. But I'm here as a leader that has a team distributed in 14 countries, and also helping, our value proposition is helping companies hire and expand into new markets, the compliance component of that. So happy to be here.
Cool. Thank you very much. Right. Also, just before I hand over to one of our other panel, I'm just going to launch the first of our polls. Now, we've been doing a bit of research, but it'd be interesting to hear from you all. So there is a poll that I'm just launching, just talking about the current state of hiring. So please share your thoughts on that. While Sam, I'm coming to you next. Let's hear from you. Tell us more.
So I'm Sam Strake. I'm head of people and talent at Operatix. I'm also in my home office today. It's a bit like a bat cave. It needs some decoration. It's really drab in here. But other than that, I'm in sunny Berkshire, so that I can't complain too much. And yeah, I've been with Operatix 2 years next week. And our business has been working with HiBob closely in those 2 years too. And our business focuses on sales and marketing.
Fabulous. Thank you very much. Welcome to the panel. And then last but by no means least, Mark.
Oh, you too kind. Yeah, so also in a HiBob t-shirt, I've gone for some branding today too, but it wasn't intentional. We just, as Daniel's week said, we all just turned up in black, which is a bit weird. So yeah, I'm Mark Douch. I am the PA manager at HiBob, covering the EMEA region. So I have a team of 4, soon to be 5. We manage the workforce plan essentially for Bob as a company across London, Amsterdam, Berlin, Lisbon, and a couple of bits with some people we have dotted remotely, as well as a development center in Croatia. So I've been here nearly 2.5 years now, so just a little bit longer than Matt. I must have said something to him in his interview that made him want to turn up and stick around. So yeah, big growth in that time. 350 to nearly 1,000 employees globally. So yeah, I don't want to pat myself on the back too much and say I have a lot of opinions on hiring, but I guess by default I probably do. And I'm also in my home office. HiBob doesn't dress us with Star Wars Lego. That's just a personal thing for me.
Thanks, Mark. I still, to this day, as mentioned, 2 years since I joined HiBob, I very much remember my first meeting with Mark and asking him about his Millennium Falcon in the background, as I was so desperate to work for HiBob because I loved the business. So it brings back lovely memories looking at that. So yeah, great to have you all here, gentlemen. Really pleased with that. And looks like we got some great responses on the poll. So thank you, everybody, on that. I'm just going to end that one now, as I think we've got just about everything from that. So, wow. The first question we wanted to ask was about, is recruiting and hiring more challenging? And yes, that's the response from you all. Yes. So huge response on that front to not really is 21% of you. So I'm going to go straight in with the big questions first, gentlemen. What is the biggest challenge you're seeing in talent acquisition in 2024, whether that's in as a HR or as the hiring manager? And also, is it the same or different from your experiences in the past? And Daniel, I'm going to come to you first on that particular question, if that's all right.
Yeah. I'm just tired now. Challenge. I mean, I think we're working in a much more globalized environment, so that presents a wider market for people to go and apply for jobs. Also, it creates the opportunity for clients to potentially look for to have a broader pool of talents to choose from. But from it just makes the we've noticed that it makes talents, they have the opportunity to much more. And even in a recession, we've seen a lot of businesses not doing so well over the past couple of years because of the macro factors in the economy. Certain roles are still in high demand, and they're being pulled from any part of the world. So I think it is tougher based on talent shortage, and also based on globalization, that we're getting bigger as a world, more polarized, but at the same token, from a work point of view, with all the tools that are available in the market now, we can adapt new ways of working.
Wow. So a lot of tools, but still one of those age-old challenges of talent shortage. Interesting.
Yeah. So we see the big driver for right now for international recruitment is A, talent shortage, 2, globalization, and 3, remote work as a concept, and just seeing people want to work from Spain, but they want to keep their job in Denmark, or like me, I spent 1 year last year in Kenya. Why? Because I wanted to. And it's getting more and more popular, especially when we go into a new generation of people working, and they don't want to spend the winters in snowy and rainy Sweden. They want to do 4 months in Bali because they can. So it's the dynamics of the workplace is changing a lot, and it also adds a challenge to finding talent, I think, based on shortage, but also based on new potential work preferences.
Interesting. Funny you mentioned Bali, because one of my best friends is currently working from Bali as well. So yeah, I'm a living example of those kind of scenarios unfolding. Means I won't see him till summer. So fascinating. Sam, what's your thoughts?
I think for us, the candidate expectations have really changed. So people sort of don't really sort of go into jobs hoping to get those jobs and will do and say anything to get them. I think, new generation entering the workforce, and, I think even post-COVID, people have a different relationship with work, and they know, they have expectations of what that looks like. And I think that's, causing much more friction in the recruitment process, because actually people will fall out of the recruitment process if they're not sure on or not liking what they're hearing. And you've obviously then got the follow-on into that. If you then promise them something in the recruitment phase and you don't deliver that, see a much higher turnover of new starters, because actually what they've been sold and what they're experiencing are two different things. So it's about making sure that you've got your value proposition, your candidate experience in place, and making sure that's lived in the business, and not having an aspirational culture or aspirational value proposition, but making sure that you have what it says on the tin. What you advertise, warts and all, should be lived and breathed when the candidates and employees start. So I think that's a big transition that we've seen. Is we've always been okay finding people, but the expectation and almost the demands, which sort of Daniel's relating to, people do want to work remotely, they do want to work around the globe. So if you want the best talent in your business, you need to find a way to manage those expectations and deliver on them.
Interesting. And I'm glad you clarified there too, when you mentioned around gens and the new generation coming in, but also COVID. So this isn't, by the sound of it, restricted to Gen Z. This is
no, definitely not. Yeah.
Frame of what work means.
Yeah. I think that people's relationship, I know mine personally is definitely changed since COVID. I wouldn't want to be in an office 5 days a week. Very much less productive in an office where I'm easily distracted by everybody else. So I come into this back cave to get some work done. So I think a lot of people have very different expectations, be that Gen Z, parents, people from minority groups that have never had access to work that now do. The world of work has changed for the better, in my opinion, and people's expectation of what that looks like is really clear, and we have to meet those expectations.
Brilliant. I just want to acknowledge Denise has asked a great question. We will get to that, Denise. So I'm not ignoring you. I will get to your question. I want to just work through what we've got here. So Mark, go on. Let's hear a bit from you. What's that big challenge? What's that thing for you?
Yeah, I guess a couple of things. What I think it touched upon a couple of points made there, right? But I think just to add one bit to it first is from the other side of the fence. If we touch on the candidate bit as well. Candidate experience is kind of a topic again this year. I was speaking at HR Tech the other week, and we kind of showcased a bit of research. I think it was done by Lighthouse that said, the 74% of companies or something this year cited candidate experience as their kind of number one sort of priority or challenge in hiring for 2024. But interestingly, in 2023, it didn't even make the top 5 list of priorities. So I think what you're seeing generally is that shift. Company, we all experienced it in a certain way, right? Whether it directly or indirectly, the sort of economic slowdown, particularly in tech, lots of people unfortunately losing their jobs, and for some organizations that was kind of in a weird way great because there are a lot of candidates. But for a lot of companies, they didn't have to prioritize candidate experience because they weren't looking for candidates. That's flipped. So I think there's a reminder, certainly for a responsibility for what I do, to encourage managers to remember their responsibilities in the candidate experience, because like Sam said, they certainly have a different set of expectations. But what I would say on the flip side of that is I get the sense, I guess talking for a little bit of experience here, but also the wider market, the expectations of businesses have changed as well, right? And I think there's the shift of moving to, okay, cool, like if you want to work wherever you want, maybe we can talk about that. If you want this flexibility, if you want things that as employers there wasn't necessarily a need or a requirement to factor in before. On the flip side, I think what I'm seeing is then the business are asking for more as well. They want you to tick as many boxes, even more so than they used to as possible in terms of experience. If you're not going to be in an office or you're going to be halfway around the other side of the world, we need to trust that you can do the job. So, the factors, I think it's good in one way. I think one of the problems that may turn up a little bit further down the line as a result of this is businesses may not intentionally, but then through that design start to miss out on opportunities for entry level talent into an organization. because they, because of this much more dynamic environment, how do you provide the structure to kind of train someone if they're never around? So it's a challenge that I think I can see kind of needing to be wrestled with a little bit more, and I think we're kind of wrestling two sides of the same coin. Candidates want top-notch experience, but then we're also having to kind of perhaps be much clearer with our expectations, because there's a patience game there. Hiring process is taking a lot longer because the requirements from the business on what that candidate needs to bring to the table, the bar is generally a lot higher than what it used to be as well.
Wow. Okay. So what I'm hearing here, so we've got a shortage of talent. We need to, the expectations of that talent has totally changed. And then we're expecting more of that talent as well. So, wow, no wonder people are saying it's harder. It makes perfect sense. There is also another poll on the go as well, where we're wanting to understand about your volume of hiring, everyone. So that is there if you want to add on that. But wow. What an opener, gents. Is there anything anybody else wanted to add on that before we push on to my next question?
And then AI is going to change everything we know today.
Boom, right.
Boom.
Yeah. It's been said, everybody, AI is in the conversation. So yeah, Daniel, definitely I want to explore on that a bit more, because that is a fascinating one. I also, for everybody, I would just want to caveat, Daniel has very kindly been here when he's not feeling his best. So in the true spirit, show must go on, he is soldiering through. So just bear with me. There's a bit of a
Thank
right.
you.
Okay. There's so many people involved in this hiring process, the talent acquisition teams battling with this higher volume, the managers, the candidates, and they don't always want the same thing here. It's very much pulling in different directions. So my question is, how do you manage these different personalities and prioritize so that ultimately you can optimize your process? So Mark, I'm going to come back to you actually on that one. It's tell me a bit more about how you're going to manage those personalities.
Yeah, I guess it's the day job. We've got kind of the candidates on one side most of the day, and then the hiring managers on the other. So I think for you reference those two, there as a group. I think that the thing is, it kind of comes down to, I think, communication or over communication for me. You can't manage competing priorities unless you know what they are, right? So the first thing is talk to people and ask them what what they want. Again, it comes back to that kind of management point around raising the bar on talent as well. If you're not truly aware of what they want, you're going to waste time with putting the wrong candidates in front of them. There's a thing there. Candidates are going to feel like they're not matching up with what you told them about a role because they have a different conversation with the manager. There's a mismatch on priorities there. So I think for me, it all comes down to just asking the right people the right questions, and then particularly on the candidate side, and then linking it back to that experience piece. Just try and over communicate. Even if you think it's going to take 2 weeks to run your interview process from start to finish, tell the candidate it will take 3. Right? Over promise, under promise, over deliver. Don't over promise, that's bad. Under promise and over deliver. It's like a phrase that was drilled into me way back when in my agency recruitment days. It applies to candidates, the managers, to whoever it is that you're working with from a TA point of view. And I think as long as you talk to people as regularly as possible and don't assume that you know what they want, ask them what they want. You're never gonna, or you're gonna very, very quickly minimize the impact of a lack of disruption, and thereby having a really unoptimized process, because you're not going to have to second guess or do one thing and then change direction, because you're kind of having a conversation about it and know where everyone stands anyway. So I'd say that is probably important for me, or from my point of view.
Yeah, and I think and I'm going to make sure I get this the right way around as well. under promise and over deliver, I'm not sure if there's any part of business where that wouldn't apply. So I agree with you,
Yeah.
mate. You're communicating well. That's a really interesting point. Sam, what's you got any thoughts to add on to that?
Yeah, so for us, what's been really important is mapping out almost the experience both sides of the fence. So we wanted to make sure our candidate experience is mapped out fully, but also our employee experience for our talent teams and so on, and mapping technology into that as well. So we wanted to alleviate almost as much of the, I suppose, we don't want to say mundane, but low, I suppose, admin tasks. We want to, alleviate some of those, so then we can offer a better experience. But we wanted to make sure that that was then optimal for both the candidates, so their experience is really great, but also then our internal teams, they've got the right tools. They're then almost being able to focus on the right things at the right times with candidates, and also then build up relationships with internal managers and so on. So it's not almost reactive, we're much more proactive because the relationship is there and they're having better conversations in the business because actually they're in sales meetings rather than doing lots of like recruitment admin. They're understanding the sales pipeline. They can better understand what's coming around the corner rather than being reactive. If we've got a client going active next week and we need 3 people. So almost getting our technology and our experience mapped out correctly has then alleviated a lot of tasks that's allowed our internal teams to almost perform more strategically and alleviate some of those pinch points in what we were doing before, where it was very reactive and a lot of friction internally.
It's a really interesting point, because there's something like when I'm working with customers, understanding that there is that human element. That the technology is great, but you can't neglect the human part of that process. And so I think that's a really important addition to this, as far as mapping things out and making sure that works. So, okay, now we've just had the results back on the on hiring volumes. So yeah, it seems really interesting here. We did some research and there's about 90% of companies are saying that their hiring volume will stay the same or increase in the coming year. So we're not seeing the increase in the budgets around TA headcount to match this. And I'm really interested to hear on what the audience say about this point as well. But from you gentlemen's perspective, what can teams, and Daniel, I know you want to talk AI on this, and that is such a hot subject, so I'm building the tension to get to you on this one. What can teams do to be more efficient, or at least better prepare? And I'm coming back to you, Sam, on this, because I loved the talk about the technology, and then I'm building towards the slam dunk from Daniel to close this out. So tell us more about how you're handling that, or if maybe you get plenty of budget.
No budget. That's not, it's no different for us. But I think for us, 2022, 21, we actually, a lot of businesses globally hired what I would say probably maybe irresponsibly, reactively, and then we saw sort of last year lots of sort of layoffs, and a lot of it was talent acquisition teams that we're growing really quickly. We need big talent teams. So really, again, with an increase of volume, I think the right thing to do is then think about how we're recruiting, how many people we have in our team, how can we do that more efficiently, maybe do more with fewer people, and almost be more responsible as an employer as well. So that may well be that we have more fixed term contracts. We've got a growth planned this year. We're not going to hire someone full time to be in the talent acquisition team. We're going to hire someone on a project sort of timeline. Or the other point that we have, and I'll let Daniel sort of go deeper into this, but looking at AI to alleviate some more of the screening of our applicants and being smarter there. So AI will help us, and definitely I don't think it's going to replace our talent acquisition team, but it's going to enhance their ability to do more with fewer of us, or the same amount of in the team. So I think AI is definitely going to be really important, but also doing things slightly different. You know, there are lots of different opportunities out there now to do more secondments, and can you bring someone into the talent team for 3 months from another business that upskills your team and, you know, gives a different viewpoint and so on. So there's lots of opportunities out there now to be smarter with than just, right, we need another additional recruiter, let's bring another head in. So I think that's the you know, key this year, you know, especially if the budgets aren't there.
Wow. Okay. There's a lot of interesting stuff in there. But yeah, Daniel, I know you had some really interesting thoughts on, I mean, it's the term on everybody's lips, but tell us more about your perspective.
Well, you mean with regard for AI, or just in general, if you don't get more money, but you have to do the same? So I think there are two. First of all, the human aspect of it. What we see as well is people, and this has been going on for years and years, and it's like almost like offshoring, where you decide to move some of your functions in the organization to regions that cost less. So, for instance, I'm a big fan, or believer, I should say, that Africa is going to be a big future nest for human capital, because you have it's in the same time zone as Europe. They speak well. They write very well English. They speak very well. Sometimes hard to understand, having lived there for a year. They speak French. So at Deel as well, we are very open in hiring to certain roles from Africa. And I think it's great because it also makes the world a little better place, because you give opportunity to countries, regions that doesn't have necessarily opportunities. But when it comes to the usage of technology and AI, I think it starts already as we just mentioned in the recruitment process. We are implementing technologies at Deel as a company that has nothing to do with us as what we do for a living, to review our applicants. We receive on average 37,000 resumes per week, and 37,000 resumes per week is a lot. So either we can decide to review half of them or some of them, or we can lean more towards internal references. Then of course it becomes a little skewed. We don't give all the candidates the right opportunity. Luckily there are screening tools that can assist and make that part of the process easier, and AI is going to just make it stronger and stronger. Once we've found the candidates, the whole onboarding process and offboarding process is going to be, I think there's a lot of repetitive tasks and things that AI is very, very suitable for. And later on, the whole entire workforce planning, who does what and when, and when are we most efficient? So that I think is big, in addition to the whole learning and development component, where instead of having classroom-led courses on a certain time, we can use more and more interactive tools and learning by technology. So, yeah.
There was a lot of great things in there, but what really stood out is 37,000 a week.
A week.
I'd feel burnt out just looking at the number. That's wow. You definitely need some screening.
So we have also another ludicrous number. Between mid-January, end of May, we had a plan to fill 1,000 positions, and we're actually, the TA team is doing a tremendous job and is a little bit ahead of the game. At least a few weeks back, they were ahead of the game to fill out 1,000 new jobs. And yeah, so we have to work hard as well and have the processes in place. Of course, technology is only one cog in a bigger solution.
Wow. And I suppose there's another message there, that if you're one of those candidates, you have to stand out. You got to figure out how you're going to stand out in that crowd, because that's a big crowd.
That's a big crowd. So, and it is a challenge too. Some organizations don't get enough resumes necessarily, and that could be challenging on its own if you don't have a big of enough pool to choose from, regardless if it's just in country or a remote pool. We are a remote first company, so it actually adds up even more, because most of our jobs, you can sit anywhere in the world. and that's our strategy. We don't have any offices. So
wow. Amazing, thank you. That's some fascinating points. And it leads me on to a really interesting question for a man who works for a technology company and has a panel that is mainly filled with technology people, but throwing technology at a problem isn't always the best solution. So what kind of technology have you found that really helps, and what are some of the best practices for identifying and implementing technology that will actually help? So that's what I want to know in this next one. So Mark, I haven't come to you for a while, so tell me a bit more.
Yeah. Biggest piece of technology or something that helps, certainly from my side, is having a proper plan for hiring. Not saying a lack of technology or the wrong technology can make that a problem, but also having nothing is also a problem. So it doesn't help I don't think it helps the kind of longer term success or stress for your talent team or your business if you don't get something like that right. Previous company I worked for, I said, I joined and was like, oh, how many? So what's the plan then? And they said, oh, well, we think you'll probably find maybe 150 people in a year. I said, yeah, cool, no worries. Where's the plan? Oh, we haven't got one. What? Like what? Not even like a spreadsheet? We hired 600 people. So because it was like kind of like, just keep going, just keep going, just keep going. I think part of what that, not that company in particular, but part of what that problem, I think, did not help the situation 6 to 12 months ago, where lots of companies went and perhaps overhired, and we saw particularly as well within TA, right, speaking a little bit from the heart for the fellow TA community, of lots of good people through no fault of their own losing their jobs, and I think there's solutions that point solutions that you can purchase that will help with mapping your workforce and thinking about where your growth is going to come from. Or you can have all-in-one tool like Bob that has a workforce planning module that also works really well, and that's been a game changer for. I've done it on spreadsheets. I've had other tools. Having something that's mapped directly to your HRIS, your core HR system, and it's plotting holes within your existing org chart and stuff, for example, and it's all easy, live, updated. It's not a spreadsheet owned by finance that they don't want PA to touch, or everybody can kind of work on their component parts, and you're getting the information in real time. It means that you don't end up risking that kind of over hiring problem, and everyone can kind of take a bit of a breath and know, okay, well, I know exactly when for the next 12 months what partners are hiring, when they're hiring, and it then helps with everything else. I know that there are maybe a couple of quarters where we're a little bit quieter, and I can do things with other technology, implementing one-way video interviewing software, for example, looking at our assessment tools, thinking about AI related tools that maybe can help us through the assessment process or better the candidate experience. But yeah, for me, I think taking it right back to the start of having a good piece of kit that allows you to know practically what you're doing for the year can then help you understand some of the other kind of more strategic gaps that can also be plugged with good technology to elevate that experience for everybody as well.
Some interesting points. I'd seem like the core thought here is organisation, and also that was a really interesting point around looking at that seasonality, and if you see that, then use those opportunities, that downtime, to then focus on how you take those extra leaps forward. So interesting. Sam, I've not come to you for a wee while. Have you got any thoughts on that?
Yeah, I think for us, and people will probably be sick of me saying, but I do a lot of mapping. So it's really easy to view recruitment and your talent acquisition in isolation. but also then what is the knock-on effect and to that. So we wanted to make sure we've mapped out our end-to-end technology and our experience. So what technology do we need when, to make sure that we've got a consistent experience? So for example, we were, especially with a largely remote team, missing things like, you know, right to work checks that weren't consistent, which again, nobody loves doing right to work checks. There's nobody sitting there waiting to want to do them, but they are, you know, extremely important to have. So how do we weave in a piece of technology that does that for us, and, you know, then integrates with Bob, so it's not then all bolt-ons? We wanted to make sure that our employee journey was integrated, to make sure that the candidate, you know, our employees are getting a consistent experience, but also, again, it's leveling up our team to almost be able to then focus more on, you know, strategic projects and actually, you know, connecting with the humans in our business rather than doing all the admin that's required. So we didn't really want any sort of points of failure in that. So that's what we were looking at, is what integrates with what talks to what, and make sure that was all mapped out as a journey. Because when I first got there, it was we may as well not have had the technology, because there's more work with putting stuff in and out of different technologies than actually spreadsheet probably would have been easier. But that was really important to us. Was, you know, we, again, Bob is like a member of our team, so if we didn't have Bob, we would have an additional person in the team, but we'd probably be increasing mistakes, because actually it's a lot that it's doing for us in terms of onboarding, making sure everybody has the right stuff at the right times and all that sort of good stuff, as you know. So that's been really important to us, is mapping it out end to end and make sure we've got the right tech at the right places.
Yeah, that's a really interesting point. I go back to one of our HRD in the UK, Toby, when I was preparing for the job, and there's a blog article, is it's never too early to start designing those processes. And it doesn't matter how small you are, start then, and then you can iterate. So that was interesting. But yeah, Daniel, anything you wanted to add on that particular point?
I just wanted to add, I think there are two things I wanted to add. So first of all, the process is to map out, you know, what needs to be done and when do we need to be done. An open headcount is either a big cost or a big opportunity cost, right? So you have the open headcount, and it's a challenge, right? So how do we fill that in the fastest way? And a scenario we had before at Deel, which I really like, we made it super simple for people to refer candidates by having an integration with Slack. So people can just go into Slack, put in 3 or 4 questions through Slack, and it connected back to the other systems. They took that away, and now you have to log into a system, you have to do this and that. And I rarely refer anymore. Before, I've referred all the time, because I can't schlep into the system. But from a hiring point of view, also something, depending on what type of organization you are, but if you're an organization that is expanding and growing a lot, one of the mantras that we at Deel had, because we have grown tremendously and tremendously fast, was to hire people that are overqualified for the job, so that because the job is going to change as the business is changing, and then rather than have to change a layer of middle manager or first level managers because they were fine 12 months ago, but now we're a different type of business, they don't have the skill. So it's better that the role grows into the individual than that the individual grows into the role, if you have a business that is changing and growing at a high pace. So I think that's pretty wise. Yeah, those were my 2 cents.
Fair enough. They're worth more than that. So that is all good. Right. Thank you. So I'm coming towards the end of my questions, and I want to ask this one from Denise. So I'm gonna ask this one more, and then I want to come to this. I know I'd asked you guys to think about the future of this for us all, but one more question from me, and then I'm going to ask Denise's question, because it's a cracker, actually. We saw in our research about 75% of mid-market companies. So when I talk about that, I'm talking those companies that are 500 employees and there or thereabouts. And they were saying that they were struggling to accurately forecast the hiring needs. So we're coming back to some of those previous points. And 58% of the companies said that the hiring projections were missed in 2023. So how can companies more accurately plan and forecast? And Mark, as you've already mentioned this, I know it's close to your heart as well, because we talk about this. So tell me a little bit more about how people can more accurately plan and forecast.
Well, if they've never done it before, I'd say just start small. I mean, even thinking about mapping out an entire year may seem like a bit of a minefield, right? If you've never done it before. I'll talk about from personal experience. Start by looking, I don't know, maybe like 3 months ahead, right? And I think it'd be interesting to know a bit more about those numbers. Like, if they missed their forecast, is it because it was the first time they did it, and actually what they've realized is that their forecast was wrong because they had a higher amount of attrition than they thought they would, or did they even consider attrition? I don't know. So I think the thing is, if you start from a position of you're probably not going to get it right first time. Okay, that's the first thing I would say. It's okay to get it wrong, but you've got to start from somewhere. First time I did it with a company I mentioned that we did like 650 in the first year. I said, right, this is ludicrous. We need to think about this. I tried just doing it for a quarter. I think we'd mapped out maybe about 128 for the quarter. We got to the end of January, and we'd already done 120. We were like, this is way off. Like, what's going on? We need to go back and take this back. And why was this wrong? You need to, try and do it in bite-sized chunks. Don't think of, if your end goal is like a big 5-year strategic forecasting plan, like you'll blow your own minds. Like go back to something that sounds a bit more manageable, a bit more bite-sized, and then don't be afraid to reiterate. And it's not I'm assuming the audience on this is kind of HR PA people. Like, it's not just our challenge alone. You need to rope in your C-suite. You need to rope in your finance team, because obviously they're the ones that manage the how much these people are going to be paid, right? You want to talk and understand kind of your revenue projections for their company and how that impacts your hiring. Like, there's a big, much bigger conversation that needs to happen, and you want to rope in as many people as possible to make sure that you do get it right. And then if it's not what you expected it to be, it's okay to kind of take a pause and spend some time trying to figure out why. But yeah, I'd say maybe don't be afraid to just like start. The best thing is just to dive in and see what happens. And or if you get a nice tool that has a module built into your HRIS that can help do a lot of the heavy lifting on your current or for you, happy days. But if not, start with a spreadsheet and start small.
I know one of my first proper jobs, in my opinion, the question mark for me was about my organisational skills. So I'd been on that journey from somebody who was spectacularly poor at organisation and forward planning to somebody who is a bit better. So it's a really good point. Start small, build from there. So that's really, really interesting point. Daniel, considering the spread of Deel and the growth of Deel and the people you talk to, you must have something interesting to add on this point.
Well, maybe not so much from a forecasting perspective. I primarily head up the commercial team, and it's fairly simple. The way we forecast is output. So if you're going to have 32 people, this is the output. So we kind of like figure out what's the saturation for the market, but then do it in smaller chunks. We forecast, always have a plan. So we do it in halves, like H1 and H2. So we revisit the forecast at least for my capacity. What I do always, and I advise everybody to do this, even the leaders in my team, is to constantly have open dialogues with candidates that are potential candidates for the future. You just poke each other. You find people when you recruit, and people shows up an interest, and you can have a coffee or a virtual coffee, so that when you get that forecasting actually to execute on the open headcounts, you have already a roster of potential candidates. As I mentioned earlier on, to me, an open headcount is a cost or a cost or an opportunity. So it's yeah. Since I'm not diehard in TA, I don't do big forecasts. Management wants another 25% growth. Well, now we need to toss in so many heads. It's very metrics driven from a dollars point of view.
Fair enough. Well, but that's still very good insight, I guess. So brilliant. Thank you for that. So I want to get to this question by Denise, because I really like this, and I'm gonna mention it. I don't know if any of you have seen this, but there might be a few people who shrink away when I mention how's your compliance and labour law knowledge. So, but this is an interesting one. So, how do you see compliance and labour law requirements adapting in a world where we have so much flexibility? And this comes back to your point, Daniel, earlier on in the session about Bali and people's wanting, and she mentions your an employee being hired in Sweden and working in Kenya. So really interested to see your thoughts, the three of you, on how businesses and labour law might have to adapt. I'll give you a moment to digest that, because that's big.
Well, this is core business for me, so that's not big.
Go on then, Daniel. Go on then. Tell us
So
more.
this is the core. This is the core of Deel. This is the core of Deel. It's actually the compliance component of hiring international and managing transactions and salaries and all of that. And of course, there's not a generic global employment law. Every country will have theirs. As a rule of thumb, most countries say that if you're in the country more than 183 days, you're tax obliged in that country. Of course, there are loopholes. There are, if you did this, that, and this. What I did, for instance, when I did my 1 year in Kenya, I was in a Kenyan contract, and I had a Kenyan KRA number, and I paid tax in Kenya. And I was no longer a resident of Sweden for that year. Now that's a super compliant way of doing it. You don't have to do it. You can play around with it. And if you're a one-man shop or just like yourself and you floater, most likely nothing's going to happen. But if the tax authority gets on your tail, depending on what country you're in, if you're in Sweden, for instance, that is not someone you want on your tail. It's really, really bad. And neither does the employer. It is super important that the employer, in my opinion, does everything they can to make sure that the employee is compliant by every part of the world where it's working. But if you want to do 2 weeks from Bali, 2 months from Bali, that is not going to be an issue. Now, of course, there are probably employment laws in Bali saying you are not allowed to work in Bali to another country. Those I would say are let's consider it a longer vacation when we log in and do some work. It's these centers around the world, Bali being one, there are a couple in South America where actually attracts remote worker for shorter periods. They have big setups for this. But compliance is super important. And there are solutions for this, temporary solutions, long-term solutions. It all depends on the scope of the employment. Because there are other things also, if you want to work remote from a very long period of time, actually you establish yourself. So maybe you're going to work for your company, but permanently live in Italy. Well, should the company be taxed in Italy? There is something called permanent establishment. These are now tax regulations, etc., that would apply to the company. And again, depending on the nature of the business, depending on who's doing what and the scope, there is a right and there is a wrong. Luckily, there are several companies like Deel that is making a living and growing because of in supporting clients with these solutions.
Yeah, so you got that. And also I know we internally have got an amazing work from anywhere policy that a few of my colleagues who don't have the same family responsibilities that I have really made the most of. Very jealous speaking to one of them from Rio last year. So yeah, if you want to learn more about those kind of things from Daniel's perspective or from ours, then we're always open to share about policies along those lines. So thank you. That was a slight diversion on that one, but Mark,
anyone with a question or a thought, feel free to just send me a LinkedIn, and I will guide you to the right people at Deel to help you.
all people, that's the best offer you've had all day. Right, okay. So Sam, Mark, was there anything you wanted to add on that particular point, or should I come to my final question?
The only thing I was going to say was, I think from a different angle, what we've seen is a lot of countries themselves are doing things. There's examples of countries offering, like digital nomad visas and things like that, right? Where they're also thinking, hey, this could be great for like our own economy if we make it really easy for people to just come and live and work here for a year. So I think there's like the company side of it, but there's also this kind of weird realization happening from actual economies as well, being like, oh, we can actually take advantage of this like much more transitional workforce by saying, oh, you want to go and like work in a different part of the world, and your employer will like facilitate that for you. Hey, have you considered Estonia or Portugal, or so there's this push on a slightly different side as well, which I guess, coming back to what Daniel mentioned, maybe helps mitigate some of that compliance stuff. So I don't know if there's an organization, if the question was meant to like, I don't know, you can kind of say to your employees, if you want to, here's some places we recommend that you might look at going. I don't know.
A really interesting point, though. Maybe we need to start petitioning our MPs to help increase our local economy. So
we're not the only country talking about skill shortage. If other countries can come up with creative ways to kind of let highly skilled people just come and work here for a bit, and pay a bit of tax here, but for a while, where's the harm?
Yeah. Wow. I got that question going.
Sorry, that's getting let's go down the political route then, which is a topic to definitely avoid.
Definitely avoid that one. That's fine. But yeah, Denise, thank you very much for that question. That is an absolute belter. And again, yeah, reach out to any of us on LinkedIn. That is one I'd certainly be interested in crashing heads with. So brilliant. Okay, I'm going to come to my final question, and we'll maybe do this as a bit of a quick fire, because I want to thank all three of you for coming along today. So let's look to the future. Thinking, what should we be thinking about today about what might well come along? I know a lot of the responses around polls, people saying, I don't know what the future holds. So as far as hiring in the future, what's the thing you see coming? And I'm not going to hold you to it, gentlemen. So I'm going to start with you. Well, I'll let you choose if somebody wants to put their hand up or speak first, because I'll let you just take a moment to formulate your thoughts on that. While you are doing that, for all of you attending today, thanks very much for being here. We've got a few moments left, but I wanted to thank you, because the audience is really special on these points. And Denise, well, brilliant. You got top marks for the question. If you want to learn more about any of us, of course, there is an element that me and Mark are here supporting HiBob. It's a business we love and we're a part of. And Daniel and his team are doing some amazing things at Deel. Same with Sam, Operatix. So if there's anything we can help with, then do reach out to us. But right, future, gentlemen. Anybody got thoughts they'd like to share on what's coming?
I can go. I just ripped the bandage right away. No, I think the future is super bright. I think what is important is that you make a plan for the future. It doesn't have to be the perfect plan. Try to be out of the box. You haven't tried remote work. You haven't tried having people work from home or from another country. Give it a shot. Be brave. Believe in it. It is here. It is happening, whether you like it or not. Nokia did not like touch display in 2007. They were not a big fan of touch display. They were the #1 mobile handheld device producer in the world. They were leading the charts. Touch display wasn't for them. See where they are now. So things are changing. We see a tectonic shift in workforce happening. I'm not going to say they're going to be setbacks, because I think that's the wrong word, but there are going to be, it's going to find its way, whatever it's going to be. There are a lot of regulations that are going to change as well in favor of more globalized workforce. But make a plan, because it shows success often very quickly. And if you don't have a plan on team meetings, on how do we pay people if they're going to work for the same role, they decide to move from the UK to Portugal, should they keep their salary? Well, Portugal is a different type of country and a different type of salary levels. So have a plan instead of just but try the plan, revise the plan, try again. But it is happening.
Great point. Great point. Mark, Sam, anything you want to add to that?
I think for me, I think almost the challenges almost are unknown. So if I was sort of going to put some investment or some thought, it'd be really understanding the people in the business and their strengths. So really increasing internal mobility. So a lot of the challenges when you're bringing people in is, almost there. Are they going to understand the business? Are they going to add to the culture? Have they got the right attitude? Well, in terms of hiring for roles, if you've got people in your business, you understand all of the almost the bits that you can't really understand from external candidates. So I think, a huge part of the future is almost like, these squiggly careers and sideways moves within the business, which I know, Matt, you've obviously had at Bob itself, so you're a good example of, that internal mobility. And just because somebody's, in HR doesn't necessarily mean they don't want to be in a sales team. If they've got the right strengths and, we can develop them over time to get them to where they need to be a great person who understands the business already, understands the processes, our clients and so on. Actually, the skill is something that we can definitely develop. So almost, I think the challenges are almost unknown, but that's almost where I'll be, putting a lot of time and effort in, is to really understanding the skills in our business and developing those and seeing where they transfer to. So we've almost got like an internal mobility map based on strengths in the business.
Oh, all right. We're getting big as we close up. Mark, I'm gonna struggle to fit you in here because I've got 30 seconds left. So
no, that's all right.
Okay. So I suppose
yeah.
Go on.
I didn't have much to add other than to say, I think, just don't be afraid of it, right? Like, there's been plenty of examples of big, shifts in the past of the way of working, and then people talk about AI is going to take all our jobs. Like, it's not. But what we've seen with these big advances over time is that they've enhanced something, and this, what Sam said as well, about making sure that everyone has the kind of skills and capabilities to shift and adapt, just means that we're all going to be fit better into kind of any changes that do happen. So I guess my one piece of advice is just embrace it, don't fear it.
Fair enough. Right, we need to close up. So I guess my final point is the way we build culture or built culture a few years back is completely different to the way we need to build it today. Hopefully that's been interesting for everybody. It's been great having you all here. Our panelists, thank you to all three of you. And for everybody listening, it's been great having you here. So I wish you all a fantastic rest of the week and rest of the year. Plan ahead, people. It's the way to success. All right. Take care. Thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.